this is Jennifer Barrera. Today on Fender Seats, therapy, stories, Cine, cines, and much more, I will be discussing how you have the need to feel, sense, or actually, this is how it starts. The servo mechanism. If you go online on Google, because a lot of people are going to say Google it, we hear people say that. Well, it says in psychology, it gives you the feedback, a better control. Basically, in psychology, it provides briefly, what I'm trying to put, is it gives you a control of your own being, right? Supposedly in your own psychological state. In psychiatry, which I'm much more at ease, or actually I have a capacity to explain a bit more, and maybe I should read what it says here. Instead of just going more or less, I should actually just read. But in psychiatry, whenever we think of servo mechanism, we think of how our nerves function. They have a better functionality, and also the cognitive functions. So we do not think in terms of only the psychology, the state of our own psychology, but we address it in terms that all our functions are connected, and they make us, and actually they do go to the control of our own psychology. So let's say, for example, something happens, the way you react is rather you're in control or not, right? That's what we often hear people say in North America. If you go to Latin America, we often hear that also, but we hear other specific notions. And one of those are, depending how you're educated, right? A lot of women, they're not supposed to answer back. So if somebody tells you something as your parent in specific Latin America or other countries, some Arabs have mentioned that in the past, some people are not supposed to ever say anything. If you say anything, then it goes against the level of education, and then they automatically put it to how your servo mechanism function, how your mind's supposed to work, versus the North American approach and the more articulate way we have of developing our own minds, of our own attitude sometimes. In my other video, it was more attitude. Some would say in our own acting. If you're 30, 40, 50, you have that attitude. Some people would say, you know, what's wrong with that person? You know, is she completely out of her mind? A lot of women aren't out of their minds. A lot of women, whenever they have their own journey, or, you know, their own trajectory, they rely on what they know. They rely on their own self-sufficient way, their own independence, and their own capacity to actually be able to succeed in life. So it goes, you know, hand in hand. Their own minds, and then their own capacity to achieve what they want, what they're striving for, right? So here it goes, the servo mechanism that we encourage in everyone, and this is how we are explaining that people have their own reaction. I'm giving this emphasis, this small emphasis, so people do have a good understanding of their own being, their own subdue of their own being, is that a lot of people, whenever they have a creation, and they make it so pretty, right? You have people that create anything that they want. Some are creators of computers, some are creators, they go outside and they know how to, you know, get the hang of going out with people. I feel like an old person doing this. Feels like only elderly do this. But they have the hang to get people together, and they can do functions, let's say events, right? I wouldn't be the person always wanted to hold events if it's not my own events with people that I would want. And then it would be a small group, and then it would be a much bigger, because, you know, you have to invite people to actually meet others, but then you kind of have people that you want to be with. They kind of get fascinated, you learn from, whether it's fashion, whether it's cinema, whether it is actually a psychiatrist that you would love to hear what he has to say. And then tell him a bit what you want, and then tell him, you know what, I actually don't need anything. But if ever something comes to my mind, then I will let you know, right? And then you have doctors. So let me go step by step, like the song goes. So here it goes, these people have that talent. Some of us have other creations. Some have the creation of inventing anything. Some it is simple charcoal, right? They sell that out there. To the world, that makes money, right? So in proper economy or in proper living, we have this beautiful thing that provides money. Sometimes it doesn't. The charcoal won't, right? So I did mention names because I do think Canada, and then we go to the US, has people that make money and then some people that make less money. So they want to go their margin. They want to play where can they go. Sometimes I ask properly, and I was very thoughtful. It was thoughtfully said, kindly, les Sophie Trudeau, how did you start? Melania Trump's, how did you start? Any name. I would want to say skaters, but I can't because I do encourage them, and I do believe specific people have a good connection. I'm not going against anybody. I'm not offending them at all. How did they start and how money is made and giving their origin, right? One is Russian from origin. The other one is more French Canadian, English Canadian, or a mix. How the things develop makes them who they are. So I'm not going to trash anything. I'm not being offensive. But you understand and acknowledge I have no responsibility myself as the Hispanic origin, Spaniard origin, and then we have German, Jewish, and then it gets very complicated because Europe was made very complicated. But my origin that I do take on is the Spaniard and the Hispanic. That's something that I've always said. So take it on. I'm not responsible if somebody feels that they always have to be paid, and then I don't have to rely that I'm an actual owner, right? If I'm an owner in Canada or I'm an owner, if I would go to the US, somebody wanting to trash something has the possibility to an extent, and then you can't, right? Because what makes money, what sells, is what people want, right? So when I'm saying this as two first ladies and they offer good, because we're not going against a person to just go in and be offensive. That's not the purpose. But we're trying to put people to understand and acknowledge how people work, rather in the industry, in the media, in the platform of real estate. And this is where I'm connecting. Some people have real estate. You can use the name Sterling. When I was in Los Angeles, you had that name come, and it was a bright name. And I'm putting everything together so people understand, they acknowledge, right? So that name came to mind, and he actually, what we heard is that they're really good, just people. They have a sense of fairness. So it gives them the insight that they do provide to others. So coming here after many, many years and having somebody just want to bother, rather my name or the name of somebody else, then that's a bit whimsical. I used to have that Canadian person when I was very young to say, whimsical, and it's true. I would write it because you have to write about stories, but then you have people that use the word. It's very whimsical. There's a lack of logic if people can't, compromise and understand how business can work, right? In every shape and form and everything that they do. So following up on the good control of your nerves, the good control of your mind, or how you react, and sometimes if you're an actor, you want to make it big, go for it, because I'm not going to stop you, especially if you're a child. And if you grow up in a family, you can go with your own reaction. But here it follows. Last video, I did mention that there was a lot of French Canadian. Let me be very logical with people. If I'm in a community where everyone's one culture, imagine, but I'm not that person, right? You have to be there for a short time. You have to be there for a time, or rather somebody oblige you, right? So we will go to court, or the court will prove that I mustn't be obliged. I'm a self-sufficient, independent person that could do my living ever since I'm almost 15 years old. And I did study, I did my university, I did all my classes. And it sounds like an old person. Mothers do that. They complain at their children. Professional people shouldn't, right? It should be just a fact. You've achieved this, and that's how it goes. It shouldn't be like, but sometimes it sounds like that disc is like, we're almost getting into that sound effect of, oh Lord. So let's keep it nice and nicer, right? So if I'm in a community and I want to go out and I'm very, very articulate and I tell them, listen, we understand your position. Your community went through all of this, right? You represent France. I myself, as a European, don't truly put my face and then say she's not truly the French version. She would represent slightly a few things, maybe in clothing, but not more than that, right? People would they would understand. So there's a socioeconomic almost understanding that people get. They're like, oh, we get it. But they always installed upon people. Oh, you have the Americans. So let's not confuse people. It means when I'm finished, I'm done with all French. I'm not obliged to rather be here, to be in the province. I can be paid, I can live my life, and I can be free within this province, in other provinces, and in other countries, right? Because my life belongs to me, my decision, and also because I'm respectful also. There's an extent. Now here it becomes tricky. Tricky can mean intricate. Intricately complicated, what some people created, not me. Here it goes. Imagine I have family, and that's truly one of my truths, is that some of my families are connected to French. So their own understanding, their own decision was that their other spouse or other person is a French Canadian or is somebody from France. The direct line comes from France. So imagine their decision to have a relationship, to have intimacy. When I do say intimacy, it can be just, close bond. And then it can be also sexual intercourse. It can be sensuality. It can be loving sexuality and making love. So imagine those people all develop that. They have a compromise to loving and caring. Rather it is their truth, all their lives, rather it is a part. But in my functionality, in my life, it isn't. But imagine people start putting others and they're like, no, you don't know and you have to do this. It's almost like they're trying to, they're trying, like, if we use a notion, they're almost trying to, like, scratch and, like, damage, like, That's what people do. And it's almost like a metaphor they use. Because they're trying to install by obligation. But you tell them politely, listen, this is what I like, this is who I am, and this is how it goes. And then there's proof, right? We have evidence, and then we have and that's how it goes. So imagine that people do that. That's not very logical. For myself, it's not logical being around only one culture. But we understand because there's other people that decided that culture. But in my living, I don't take it. So imagine developing, because we've been talking about sexuality in the past, their own intimacy and sexuality isn't my component. I wouldn't dare to go to a house and be like, what is I didn't grow up that way. I don't have to do that. A lot of people would say we would be highly disgusted if it's rather one person or the other, because we don't go to that, right? It's not the movie Endless Love. We have a scene where the couple makes love and the mother sees the scene. But then it's a very deranged relationship, right? Wanting something. Most people don't have that mindset. Most people don't want something. Once you can see something and you're like, oh, I would want that with somebody, not with that person, right? So I don't have that obsession with the French Canadian or the people from France, right? So I'm not going to put that as a way of trying to take something. So try to understand me, and that applies to any person, to any person in the world. And I do use examples so people understand. Right? If your culture is Asian and you want to be among the Asian, and somebody's obliging you to be very Hispanic, a lot of Asians will make fun of that. And then people kind of have to have their own understanding. I do take it nicely and lightly. And let me finish first the French, because that's the first, but you know, there's an insight. People have to understand what they've created as their own reality or as their own creation. And some people, it can be a motion picture. I'm going to tell you this example, and it's added fundamental fact elements that sustain what makes a person, what makes that person who they are, and how it goes. And this is so imagine that there's a reason why we develop how girls can react. So let's say one relationship didn't work than the other, and then we go on and there's a motion picture or there's a story. But then somebody's obsessed, and those are my people. They would be, let's say, a friend or a family member. They're in the industry of Hollywood, and they're not the Quebecois. So the Quebecois asking a mother of mine, Jolene her into a set doing a motion picture, listen, you gotta have a mental issue, and if we go to court, you lose all your rights, right? You do have to acknowledge the truth, right? You did not grow up in this. You're not that name. You're not my name. So it doesn't make sense. In front of the court, in front of the jury in the court, first, there's no supposed to be a jury. You're not supposed to ever cause that. If you cause it once was too much. Those are legal rights for a person. They start as early as a child, then at 15, and then at 18, people have specific rights at 21, and they continue. So imagine the ignorance that you created. What are you sustaining it by? By money? By a bank? Of course, but then we have agencies that secure money. You can't go on shaking it and saying Hollywood is the family of every Canadian. No. Hollywood is part of whom I was, part of whom my family was, part of my friends. And those people, trust me, they've made mistakes. And they're trying to put it to them and being very thoughtful. So we're offering them this chance. Don't make Canadians all nuts. They're all not family of nuts. We can't do that. But some people make more logic than others. So addressing that and assessing that and doing assessment that's proper makes it more easier. For somebody who's an investor, or somebody who's an owner, from somebody who has family, or somebody who's just a business person. Right? That's the logic. It constitutes. So that person must have liked the French, or must have liked somebody. Because God, not relying on being able to understand basic notions makes it a bit hard. My eye went like, like, Jesus, like, what happened? Like, so much time. So here it goes. Don't take it wrong, right? I'm not going against the French Canadian. I'm not going against the Canadian. I'm stating facts. And then we have those people that are very thoughtful. And we wish that. Does it work? It doesn't work. But having a French Canadian beg that, you know, an Hispanic is in, that's kind of weird. That's just weird. And it's very odd in law. Odd. Because we have the laws. So they have this career, they have this career, they have this ownership, they had buildings, so they became owners of Canada. This person, no. So it all comes, it's a system. It's almost like a transcript being sent whenever you take a flight, all information. If you bypass that and you lie, it shows later in court again. So it's like the movie. I'm trying to put like a bit of a mood, but that's not the mood. I was just trying to put a like a suspense, but that's not the matter here. What we're trying to showcase is that people need to be logic. They need to use good logic and being logical. But myself also, right? Myself, if I'm not logical, then, you know, where do you situate yourself, right? You have to kind of be realistic in this also. And this is what I've done. So if I'm doing this and I'm expressing it and I'm purposely seeing it and saying it in a specific way, so it makes it very much understandable. It makes the people in various industries understand. Some people might just be in clothing, you know, that they're in fashion, they understand, they're like, oh yeah, so it makes sense, you know. We have people from this country and other countries, and some people are just in other specific areas, psychiatry. A lot of people in psychiatry would say, what is our best understanding of the human mind, right? What is best in how we live our lives? What's best when we say this is the worth of our life, or this is what we do that's much better for ourselves as for another person. And this is worth the living, or this is living more than just being a person who seems or doesn't do more, right? Who's not committed, or who they're not committed to their living. There's being committed to others, there's being committed to what one does, but also committed to our own living, right? If you're doing something, you're committing yourself to that, right? So wishing people can understand that it all has this connection, but also it doesn't have to be something that makes it offensive, unless there's a boundary that we're creating, and then there's just a veto call where I can actually situate myself and say, you know what? There was a story, there was a motion picture, it was all fictional. I went all and I said what I had to say and perhaps offended, but this is the reality of it. Now, if I'm going realistically and I'm going to say something, I will say it. And then if we're in court, that's not legal. But if you're outside of the court, then you're allowed, right? You're permitted to say because it's not logical at some point. But here it's not the case. Right now, what I'm trying to say is I'm pushing people that whatever creation you're making, whatever control you have, that's yours. But you have to trust others also, or you have to actually respect specific laws and boundaries that makes a person. For myself, in this business, I created much. But I didn't just take the notion I create. I took much notions on my knowledge, on what was applied studies, right? I took everything and I was like, what can I do? Because I used to work only in my house, and I used to tell myself, oh, this is what I can do. My parents created this, and I can do that. And truthfully, I could, right? And it was nice. But then I wanted something for my own self, something that makes my own being. And you hear that in a lot of people. And that's not wrong, right? Don't take it wrong. And then it's not just a doctor. A doctor commits to only being in medicine. And that's never, never wrong, right? But if I wanted something else and combine everything that I could use, then I have to use a format that I can use and that I can put it forward, and people can actually like and also associate themselves, their own thoughts. They can relate, but also associate in their own living. They apply it to themselves, or they just feel like it's nice. You know, if I would write a story, how would I put the character differently? If, you know, it has this approach, it wouldn't maybe be just me, but it would be that. So putting that, I want people to understand that. Also, it applies to specific origins. So imagine that family of mine, they're the Americans, right? They're the cinema. And then you have the English. I'm not going against the English community. But imagine there's one who says, we're all friends and we're here. Some of us weren't very close to that person, perhaps. But those people want to gain on her, or they want to understand who she is, right? That's all right. But then you have to respect her laws. If you're trying to redo your life, redo your business, find a new love of your life, which, you know, it can happen. Nobody's going to go against you. Most people don't, actually. I wouldn't be going like, I'm going to go against the English lady. Most people don't. But we all have the good sense of there's specific laws that apply in our business, and then there's a specific ways that our lives function and how we apply boundaries. So what works for me, works for me. And I ask others to kind of acknowledge. So we can all acknowledge how it makes it better, right? So it is easier. And that applies to every business. So it's much more easy. And some people will ask that when they want children. They're like, I don't want this specific mindset, or I don't want this therapy. Or some people get aggravated. You hear that. And some people, it reminds them of something that it boiled them. The sense of anger, and we all have those triggers at some point, and they just have to discard that information out. But you have to understand that in life, in order for things to function, you might remove me, and then you can, because there's laws. But then if you put somebody out there, then there's others, right? So there might be a child, or there might be other people that continue specific work. So wishing that people can acknowledge that their own control of their own being is very much great. Their own culture and origin also. It determines much on your own education, but also it determines on your own purposes sometimes. So don't take wrong specific, and it goes also with your own sexuality. I can attest that many people, if a relationship didn't work, you don't have to stay alone all your life. It's not true. If it happened upon that and people put it, then try to, always address, and that's what I did. I think it's very, very important that people acknowledge that that's not the solution, but rather a conflict and a problem people do that shouldn't exist, right? If you're a friend, an American friend or a family member, you have to acknowledge if you were resented or something didn't work for you, then understand if you have that evil sense, you have to make that sense of fairness, then try to go and mold it to see what truth is out there. Because my role has a limit here, right? As an owner, I'm primarily supposed to make sure that it works, that the therapies or the information provided all work together. So rather there was a book, what happened to the character? What did happen to myself? So there are only two things that work here, or there's only these two therapies, or there's only this reality that I want to create something. I realize yet again that I want to have a business. Some people, that's what they do. They're like, listen, for me, I couldn't study a lot. I didn't want to study a lot. It wasn't my reality, but I wanted to really have this business. And that's what they do, right? They do it, and that's nice. But then don't take it upon others that that's the same guideline that they have. Because some people went another direction. They're trying to bring their own reality together, and they want to make sure that it works. So wishing that people can really question themselves, because it's a reality. You have to question the reality of others. If you're in motion picture, if you're in the industry of cinema, as for myself, I've always asked my rights. I've always asked what's concise, and then upon others. So if you have parents, if you're young, and then at some age, and then obviously I've spoken of the court. I try to bring it and slide it. I'm sliding it in, so it makes more logic. It's more. It is more logical. Excuse me. I've said logic because it's a keyword, but the proper way of saying it is more logical. So here you go. So wishing upon that people can use their own well-being, their own, and they understand part of themselves, right? This is part of ourselves that we're understanding, but also it's part of others. And you take it lightly, and you take it nicely also. And that can be also for a singer. You often have people that, they have their own ways, and they're like, listen, I just want to sing. It's very simple. I'll sing until I make it, and it sounds good, and it goes that way. And it's fine, right? It is absolutely fine. But you have to understand specific things sometimes so it becomes much better. And sometimes understand why also the sound of your voice can alter. And then you go into the phase of acting. Some actors have it nicely. They connect directly, or sometimes they don't even use their emotions, and they're constantly having an emotion, but then they really go into only their heads. They're like, don't be in your head. And you hear people say that, but then there's a specific teacher that will teach you specific techniques, how they put it together, so the actor is very much protected, and they can just, they push themselves, and it works. That's a good therapy. It's a good technique, and nobody's damaged. You don't harm yourself, and because that person just wanted to sing. So basically they're singing, but they're acting at the same time. So wishing that all of this makes people more confident. They use good purposes for their own self, but they understand also. I wish you understand a bit about myself, how logical I have to be, because truly I'm logical here. I can't go around running after some people. It'd be funny if I can't do that. There's resources, there's laws, and then there's regulation. But when there's been an extensive amount of years, we see case studies, we see realities, and we see others as we see our own self, right? And then there's a point where we want to see our own truth, and we want to make that. So wishing that people, the Americans, if anybody got offended, you're not supposed to, but then you have to see your truth when there's a lack, when something was illogical, and then some people said, that was being stupid. Right, you're going to hear that upon some people, and then how can you use it? So those are people in studios or people that work in specific industries, so they don't take it wrongly. It's not evil intentioned or evil minded, but it's actually a good purpose, and my work's done as owner, I make sure that there's, there's specific information that was addressed, and then people feel comfortable. And if they're comfortable, and if they get inspired and they feel good with this, then it continues on the right direction. So all of this emblematic of work makes sense. And when it doesn't make sense specific, then it has to be connected to something else. And if it's connected to something else, then it's good. And if it's connected to another business that's not been divulged or something in the process, then nobody's supposed to be they're not supposed to feel unwell. So wishing you have a good day, wishing that you do something that you love, and wishing that you have a better understanding of specifics in the world, or in your life, or in just your own reality. Thank you, and have a good day.